Okay, so hello, I'm Chris Godber of Alien Rabbit, and today I'm going to be talking to Jon Elkon, who is the author of our latest upcoming release, Ragazzo. Would you like to introduce?
I'm going to correct you on that.
Is it yeah?
Repeat after me. Ragazzo.
Ragazzo?
You got him. You got him. Ragazzo.
I was
It
worried I'd
does,
do that.
yeah, it does worry me because my first novel, which was called Umfaan's Heroes, people told me they had a problem pronouncing the title.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it looks like I've done it again.
But it was I think it's like if I'm not mistaken, it's like a sort of slang word for like boy, isn't it? But it's like a bit like rascal.
Yeah.
So like
It's
rascal.
like urchin. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like a raggedy ass boy,
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
a sort of rebellious boy. So Italians will say to their friends, "Hey, ragazzo," you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. So yeah, if you could just shortly introduce yourself, just talk a bit about your background and yeah, just that, I suppose.
so I came to this country years ago as an asylum seeker from South Africa, escaping apartheid. Had many adventures from homelessness to ultimately being in the marketing business, including the record business, all kinds of stuff. I've also done some teaching. So what happened was when I was thoroughly bored with marketing, I wrote my first novel, which was very successful. It was called Umfaan's Heroes, and it had tremendous reviews. It was published by Andre Deutsch. My second novel, Umfaan's Heroes, followed. Sorry, Laszlo's Millions is the second novel, followed. And Laszlo's Millions, I think, is the better novel, but there we are. Then Andre Deutsch went bust. They didn't go bust. Actually, Andre died. His all his copyrights were like sold off, and the company was closed. And then my dear agent decided to go to Spain and become a writer. So I then self-published my next book. Also, I did a book of poetry, which was quite fun. And now this book kind of crept up on me. So this book has been brewing for a long time, ever since I discovered the absolute genius of Baroque opera. Now, that's completely weird. Okay. So bear in mind, I was in the music business. I was in the, in the punk era and in the era of the new romantics and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I was really into that kind of music, really alternative scene and all that stuff. And then I don't remember how, I discovered Baroque opera. I thought, what the? This is bizarre. This is fantastic. Why doesn't everyone know about this? And the character of Guido started to evolve from this, and Guido's story started to erupt. So it's taken me 8 years approximately to do this novel. I must tell you, my previous novel took like 9 months, just knock it out. But this one, it was haunting. It was fascinating. I've got about 16 versions on my computer, of which I've no idea if you have the right version, but I hope you have anyway. Um, and I've had so much delight writing it. And my first novel seized me, and it had me absolutely enthralled for 9 months. This one has seized me and had me enthralled for 8 years. And even now, when I read bits of it, I can burst out crying or burst out laughing. And I'm so glad that you're here to help me share that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank you for that.
it's been a pleasure actually working on this story and this book. And um what how much research and like what kind of research did you have to do to into the settings, the time, the
Yeah.
place, the composers, and all the different themes that you explore in your book? How did you approach that?
Well, thank goodness for Google. I mean, my first my first novel I had to go into libraries and I had to go into newspapers and I had to really, plunge through a ton of paper. But Google is too amazing for words. I kept discovering new things and then new things on top of the new things. Of course, all the new things were very old things. So Google just is a treasure house. It just opens doors. So I researched immensely to really try to make sure I got everything right. And then I was very lucky in finding an editor who was both an opera singer and a writer. And she went through everything to make sure that I had all the detail right. So, yeah, the answer to your question is a hell of a lot.
Yeah, that sounds really good. What did you find of the themes that are explored in the book? Can you talk a little bit? You're saying about how there's elements of comedy and tragedy. Well, obviously, without giving away too many spoilers, can you talk a little bit about yeah, some of the themes and just how the comedy and the tragedy comes into play, obviously without spoilers.
Absolutely. Well, I have the sort of mind that can see the funny side of almost everything, including absolute tragedy. This book is really based on the absolute tragedy of, in the 18th century, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of young men were castrated in order to preserve their voices and to give them the voices of angels. Now, that very fact really I found very, very powerful. But these castrati, as they were called, were pop stars of their day. They were huge, huge stars. Women and men would faint in the opera houses when they sang. So I was riveted by this idea. What if somebody was to come along in this century, or last century rather, and had that kind of voice? Would it have that kind of impact on an audience? So I invented one. But as I said, my natural tendency is to laugh even at deep tragedy, as I did in my first books,
Yeah,
which were about apartheid, which is a terrible subject.
yeah, of course.
And I think I've produced a mixture of comedy and tragedy, which would make Handel delighted, because in a sense, Handel has written the book, because Georg Friedrich Handel, a great composer, he was the spark. He was what set me off on my journey into Baroque opera. A Mensur for a Mädchen. The formal duel, or Mensur, in a German university begins with the insult. And so Franz, egged on by his new best friend Karl, confronts Hans, his identical brother. To the delight of all the students there present in the quadrangle, he says 2 words. It is an unforgivable insult which can only be resolved with blood. Dumme Junge! A translation in context would be something like Dumbo, idiot, stupid boy. And the formal response is the challenge to a duel. The rules and rituals of duels have evolved a great deal amongst German students since hundreds of years ago, when they were always to the death. By this time, many have become mere tokenism. How dull. In my day, there was much more blood, I assure you. But these callow students, with their melodramatic simulacra of great passion, these pimpled boys will accept a single drop of blood as a victory. Both Hans and Franz are secretly very grateful for this gentlemanly way of resolving their newfound brotherly antipathy. Both want to get back to their old ways, Two halves of a twin whole, companions in everything, everything that is, apart from the artistry of dear Gertrude. Fine. The winner, the man who draws the first blood, will not only have exclusive access to her, her opinion notwithstanding, but will universally be acknowledged as having the biggest schwanz. I mean, no one ever dies in a duel nowadays. They're a flick and a prick. The pariser, the sword often used, an épée with a sharp point, would scratch. A drop of boy blood would pop onto the surface of a tiny lesion on a cheek. Honour satisfied, possession of the girl established, brothers back in arms. And so, on a rainy afternoon in April, two identical young men, identically dressed like facing mirrors, face each other. We're in the gymnasium, the sports hall of the university. It smells of sweat and leather. The parallel bars are stained and grubby. The wooden floor shines with the resentful glow of resentful forced student labour, cleaned by punished students with towels on their knees. Around them, the Studentenverbindung, the student body of the first year. Behind each of the Paukarten, the duelists, stands a youth designated as a physician, although neither had completed their medical studies. Picture Hans and Franz then, dressed in their dueling kit, spectacles of iron, not masks. This is to allow the opponent's blade access to the cheek, practically the only place open enough to receive the cut which would end the match. Each wears a padded jacket, each holding their thin, razor-sharp dueling sword. Left hands behind their backs, right in a leather gauntlet. I can't tell them apart. And when, seconds after the signal is given to commence duelling, the point of a sword pricks its way into the most vulnerable part of a padded jacket, slips like a phantom into a lung, slips straight out, with a laugh from both men, a relieved laugh, even though it would be better if the bloodletting had been from the face. This finishes it. In seconds, hurrah for the drop of blood. Who won? All the young men ask, disappointed it was so quick and yet relieved. Hurrah! Franz or Hans? Who is it? Slowly stopping laughing and sitting, suddenly coughing, letting out a speck of blood from his mouth and saying, "Hey, Franz," coughing so that a light spray of blood splitters over his white padded jacket. "Look," he says proudly, "blood!" But he bows over, kowtowing, and must lie down. The physician runs to him. "Scheiße! Lungenfischer! His lung!" Herr von Bülow, the boy's father, was determined to hush up the entire episode. If he mourned, only in public. He could never feel or understand the great chasm in the heart of the surviving twin. Herr von Bülow, a minor official in the Weimar Republic, was a powerful man in the province and an influential member of the assembly. He feared nothing in life except his wife, his sons, and the loss of his reputation. He had no patience with self-pity or regret. Besides, von Bülow had been a participant in a duel in 1880 in the same university, killing his opponent for the supposed affection of a prostitute. His own father suppressed that scandal, as he suppressed this one, with an appropriate payment and a quick funeral, of course. Like father, like son. And to be honest, the Herr never liked Hans. Too smart, too arrogant, too argumentative, too beloved of his mother.
How was that actually? So, obviously, music plays an important part in the book. How did the music sort of guide you through creating the narrative and the story whilst you were writing it?
Yeah, so one of Handel's operas, Rodelinda, has the most absurd plot. Let's face it, most of most of the Baroque operas have the most absurd plot. And the plot normally goes like this. This one loves this one, but this one loves that one, and that one loves the other one. And that one's in disguise, so that they get it completely wrong. And in the end, they go through terrible tragedies. And then Apollo descends in his sky chariot, saves everyone, and there's a happy ending. So
Yeah.
that's basically the plot of 90% of Baroque operas. Rodelinda's is no different. But when I heard the music for the first time, I thought, wow, I can see how my character, this young man who is bought on the streets of Naples and trained to be the world's greatest singer, I can bring it to a fantastic conclusion with the conclusion of the opera Rodelinda. Almost the plot of the opera Rodelinda is kind of parallel to the plot of his life.
Yeah.
But of course, you can imagine the effect and the impact on this young man's psyche of this forced operation.
Well, yeah.
So he it doesn't turn out well for most people.
Yeah, I mean, it's most men's greatest fear, isn't it? And I mean, that must have been quite difficult at times to explore, like from a psychological respect, I suppose, as well. Like having a
Yeah.
character with, yeah. Um, in terms of in terms of the audience, like for the book, are you hoping that it will I guess the opera lovers will be drawn to it, but then are you hoping also to educate people who might not be so well versed in like the lore of opera and the history of it to get interested as well? Or how did you sort
Yeah.
of like think of that whilst you were writing the story, I suppose?
You know what, Chris? I'm not even aiming for lovers of opera, really. I'm aiming for lovers of good humorous fiction. Anybody who likes Kurt Vonnegut, okay, or anybody who's read Don Camillo. Do you know what Don Camillo is?
It rings a bell, but I've
Yeah,
not read it
yeah.
myself. No.
Anybody who's read tragedy and comedy,
Yeah,
I think would love this. And anybody who loved my first book would
excellent.
really, really, I think, take delight in it. I
How
really aim to cause delight.
On that note, then, how do you think this differs in respect to your previous stories?
Well, my previous stories, I was trying to make a political point. My political point was about the horrors of apartheid and
Yeah,
racism. And I was trying to couch that in a kind of humorous, fluffy bubble, like putting inside a stick of candy floss, a grenade.
yeah,
So, um, in a sense, this book is a little bit the same. There's quite a lot of candy floss, which is quite tasty and delicious. But inside it is the tragedy of these young men whose lives were destroyed by the greed. It is a form of abuse by
yeah,
the greed of these opera producers,
yeah.
who then created the most divine music for these people to sing and to perform.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like uncovering a hidden history because I mean, I'd heard of castrati before. I think my pronunciation is well done, right? I've heard of castrati before. I knew they existed, but I've never really known much about the history of it all. And it is almost like a hidden history, I suppose, as well. Because like I think most people are the same. They're aware that they existed, but
Yeah,
it's like a hidden part of history, and it must have been like I imagine it must have been very interesting and sometimes upsetting even to research the background of all that. And I think you were sort of hinting at that before, like this tragedy of what was done to these young men, which is I mean, it's a mutilation.
absolutely.
It's like a
It's a mutilation and it's abuse.
yeah,
But what is slightly comforting is the lives that the stars had. Of course, for everyone that was a star, there were thousands that were not stars
mm,
and did not achieve fame on the opera stages
yeah,
of Europe. For every Farinelli, Farinelli is a great example, and please have a look at the film Farinelli. It's stunning. There were hundreds of thousands who were castrated and became, chorus boys in the cathedrals, and then chorus men in the cathedrals, and probably disappeared from history and from life. And of course, they couldn't have children, and they couldn't have a decent life. So it really was a holocaust of the 18th century. I mean, we can casually say it's over now, thank goodness. But you know what? I have met a few people who suffered abuse as young men, and their lives were wrecked.
Yeah.
Absolutely wrecked. And I think the similarities are considerable.
It has a profound effect on anybody if that sort of thing happens.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's far too serious.
I mean, yeah. I mean, so yeah, what are you? What's next, basically?
There's a sequel. I've started a sequel.
Oh, brilliant!
In which he, disguised as a woman, goes to Zurich in order to escape. Bearing in mind, and he continues his adventures there. And of course, we're going to Zurich between about 1925, and then he goes to Munich around 1925, 26, 27. So you'll never guess who he meets there. Munich. So there we are.
Good. That was a good teaser for the sequel.
Yeah.
Okay, this is rather a general question, but like what writers do you generally like look up to, or do you like enjoy reading yourself personally?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned Kurt Vonnegut, who is a tremendous influence. Now I'm going to quickly have a look at my bookshelf. I love Douglas Adams. Who doesn't? Tom Holland. I like historical stuff. I read a lot of history. So amongst my favorite books in the whole world are the Iliad and the Odyssey of Homer.
Oh, of course, very classical Greek literature.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So yeah, classics and modern, really. Ben Okri, fantastic writer. And I guess, oh, by the way, Anthony Sher, I think he was a great actor and a great writer, by the way. And Hilary Mantel. Hilary Mantel and I liked each other's work. So I've got to like her work. I mean, it's compulsory, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. I think I'll probably do how do I pronounce it again, actually?
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Ragazzo.
Ragazzo.
You see the double Z. The double Z is like TZ.
Yeah.
So you go Ragazzo.
Ragazzo.
I hope people will, even if people can't pronounce it, they can spell it.
So Ragazzo is available for pre-order now on Kindle, and then the paperback is also, and both those are released on the 26th of September. And yeah, please check it out. We've worked very hard on this. Obviously, John's worked very, very hard on it. But yeah, it's been a joy to work on it. I did some illustrations for it as well, so it does feature some illustrations. And yeah, please check it out, and I think we both hope you enjoy it. And yeah,
I warn you, it's nuts.
That's a good thing. Okay.
in